Using cover is a very important part of your practice because ideally you want to use cover if possible. You want to be behind something that stops bullets. Now, before we start talking about use of cover, we need to get a couple of definitions out of the way so that you guys understand. We're all talking on the same sheet of music, if you will. When we start talking about cover, there is cover and there is concealment. There's also visible target and there is available target. Those are the main terms that we kind of want to discuss. So cover, meaning stops bullets, is completely dictated by your adversary's weapon system. What they're shooting makes a difference of what you get behind, is whether it's cover or not. So if they're shooting a 22, you might be able to get behind any kind of thing, or a pellet rifle. But if they're shooting a 50 BMG, obviously you need to be behind something pretty legit, right? So it all dictated by what's coming in your direction. That being said, concealment is anything that blocks your visibility, and concealment can be as simple as darkness. If you are not seen, you are using cover, right? So it can be, you know, standing behind bushes, any of that kind of stuff. Then when we go in that path, we've got visible target, right? Which is what's available here. And if you guys are all shooting 9mm, I wouldn't want to rely on this stopping bullets. So this is visible target, but this is available target. All of me is available target because likely the 9mm will go through this barrel. If this is a concrete cylinder reinforced wall somewhere, we have visible target and available target. Make sense? We're all talking about the same thing. Now, if this is cover, if it stops bullets, it provides me with cover whether I'm right next to it or I'm 20 yards back, as long as I keep it between me and my adversary. So that being said, we want to try to be at least weapon systems distance away from the cover. Possibly further, but at least weapon systems distance, especially when we're talking about using a handgun. There's a series of reasons for that. The first reason is if I get too close to cover where I have to extend my weapon system, just by position, I am making more of my body available target than necessary. I am forcing more of my body to be exposed. So if I back up just a little bit, now I can keep more of my body behind this cover. If that's the case, ideally I want to stay away from cover and keep as much of my body in there as I can, because from a geometry standpoint, it is to my advantage. I'm close to cover and my adversary's far away, they're gonna see me before I see them. The best advantage or best description I have of that when we talk about angle is horizontal cover. So if I stand here, right here, I can all see you guys. But I'm really close to cover, you guys are probably 10 yards away. If I drop down behind here, you guys tell me when you can see the top of my head. Right, you guys can see me, and now I can see you. And that is sheer geometry. The closer I am to cover, the later I'm gonna see you, and you'll see me sooner. Now, somebody told me one time, well, your eyeballs are down here. That's why. I said, well, are your eyeballs up here? It's the same thing, right? We're shaped the same, so that we're on equal footing from that standpoint. The other example I wanna give you real quick is this one. If I've got my two buildings in downtown wherever, and I've got a 2-lane road one way in this direction, and I have a 2-lane road one way in this direction. I'm driving my motorcycle or whatever, and I've got the green light, but I'm concerned about traffic running the light from this direction. Do I want to be in this lane, or do I want to be in this lane? Why? I see them sooner, and I have more time to react. The exact same thing stands here. If I'm using cover, if I'm coming up on the corner, if I'm right here up on the corner, I have less time to react and respond to what's here. If I'm backed away from that corner, I see things sooner and I have more options in which to react. So general rule of thumb, we want to stay back away from our cover, at least weapon systems distance, if not further. One more reason we want to do that. If this thing stops bullets and I'm standing up very close to it, what do the bullets do when they hit it? Remember we were talking about on steel, right? I have secondary fragmentation coming off of this cover. And so the chances of me getting hit with larger pieces of fragment are much higher. Whereas if I take a step back, even if I'm on the same target line, I have less chance of getting hit by that secondary fragmentation or smaller pieces of projectile. So there's a whole lot of reasons that I do not want to get super, super close to cover. What is the exception to that rule? When your adversary is in an elevated position. So if they're in an elevated position, if I back away from cover, they can see all of me, and then I am forced to get closer in order to use this cover properly. So if they're on the second story, I'm gonna have to suck up really close to whatever I'm using for cover. All right, best case scenario, if someone's shooting you from the second story or third story or in a building, where's the best place to be? Right up next to the building, right? Because then they have to expose themselves in order to engage. So there's always exceptions to the rule. If this is my target line that I'm gonna be on, I'm gonna draw a little line here for the purposes of demonstration. What I wanna act like is this is a term I think I came from Dave Maynard, was a liquid sheet of glass, if that makes sense to you guys. So I got this sheet of glass here, and as I move, that sheet of glass moves with me. When I want to use cover to engage, and we're not going to get into tactics and how we clear, that's not the purpose of this. But if you imagine that's that liquid sheet of glass, I want to keep as much of my body on this side of the sheet of glass as possible. Because when I expose, that's when I'm exposed to incoming fire. And so the least amount of my body as possible needs to be exposed when I return fire. So my goal here is to have basically my head, part of my arm, and the muzzle of the gun, and that's it. So it doesn't matter if I'm shooting to the right or to the left, that's what I want to do. One point of caution when we go down this path. I can theoretically line my sights up even with a pistol, right? And not have my muzzle clear. So if this stops bullets, I want to ensure that I expose enough of my weapon for the bullet to clear the cover that's in front of me. It's not super difficult with a handgun. You start shooting with rifles with big mechanical offset, this starts to become a much more serious problem. Let's talk about position a little bit. If I am shooting around the right side of cover, in general, I want to have my right foot forward. By having my right foot forward, it gives me a good, stable platform in order to shoot from. And it also allows me the opportunity to lean out around and, if necessary, push back off of that forward leg. If I get into my normal shooting position and I have this leg back, when I start leaning around cover, I very quickly become off balanced and do not have the ability to come back. So if I'm going around the right side, right foot forward. If I go around the left side, I like to have my left foot forward. Again, that allows me to really lean out around the cover if need be, and then push back if necessary. Okay, before we start talking about kneeling cover, let's talk just quickly about vertically displacing. So if I need to, for whatever reason, I'm shooting and I want to change elevation. I reload the gun, or I see something, I come back in from cover. I don't want to come back out in the same place that I was just exposed at. When I go to a kneeling position to vertically displace for the purposes of shooting a handgun, I highly recommend that you put your right knee down when you're around the right side and your left knee down when you're around the left side. Again, that allows me to lean out further and expose less of my body. When I put this knee high, and you can do this, and there may be reasons where this makes sense, but when you put this knee high, depending on your flexibility, you're not going to be able to get far around this corner, and when you do, you're going to have to be really careful to try to keep your body in behind cover. Make sense? This becomes way more difficult and technical. This is a little bit easier to do. But if need be, if I'm in a kneeling position, I can vertically displace even further, okay? And look underneath the car, look underneath the bed, something like that, if I needed to do so. And never lose the ability to engage if I needed to. horizontal cover and or kneeling positions. As a general rule of thumb, the closer I get to the ground, the less mobile I am. We used to use the term closer to the ground, the more stability, less mobility, that kind of thing. In a kneeling or in pistol shooting, the reality is this position is actually less stable than standing up. Why? Because I don't have a foot on the ground with all those muscles now to control that. I'm on my knee, which is not necessarily very stable. And for the purposes of handgun fighting, I want to maintain mobility because getting stationary creates a lot of problems. So again, mobility equals survivability. But a kneeling position, if anything, we want to do a rapid kneeling position. Try to avoid getting so low to the ground that I cannot move. The nice thing about a kneeling position like this is I have a lot of ability to move around and shoot in different directions if I need to, still maintaining horizontal displacement. If this is cover for me, I want to keep in mind that with a handgun, I probably don't want to, always exceptions, I know this, everybody's gonna say, well, what if? This, clearly, if this stops bullets, is not a good position for me to be in, because all of my really important parts are exposed to incoming rounds. Regardless of how low I get, I'm still not really using cover very well. And if we go back to what bullets do when they hit hard surfaces, my chances of getting hit with bullets is highly likely, especially when we start talking about across the hoods of cars and things of that nature. Those of you who've shot cars and seen cars shot around, those bullets tend to hit, skim across, right across the top, and come off at near full bullet weight and velocity. So if this is the hood of a car or something like that, again, ideally, I probably want to be pretty far away from this if possible. With what exception? Adversary in an elevated position. And in that case, I'm going to have to get in very close. Shooting over the top of horizontal cover is great because it gives you more visibility of the battlefield, if you will. You can see more of what's going on, but more of your body is exposed. If you know and you have visibility of where your adversary is, you're much better off getting low and shooting around the side of that low cover if possible, and keeping more of your body and more of your important parts of your body behind cover. One last thing about horizontal cover. When you are kind of clearing horizontal cover, the reality is there's no good way to do that. All right, it's very difficult to do, especially if you're by yourself. And then what I mean by that is, if you're coming upstairs or you're peeking over a wall or any of those kind of things, as you guys already saw, you're gonna see me way before I see you. So we have to keep that kind of thing in mind. And without kind of rolling this over into tactics, if I am using something that is horizontal cover and I need to come and shoot, I need to come up and be ready to engage when I expose myself. If I creep this corner really slow, I'm gonna be seen long before I see them. Make sense? So when I go to take this horizontal cover, I kind of have to be aggressive, see what I need to see, and be ready to fight if necessary. When you come up to your position to shoot, don't start getting into the quick peek thing where you try to pop out, shoot a shot, and then jump back behind cover. That's a bad habit for a couple of reasons. If this is someone that needs to be shown a lot of love, you might as well show them a lot of love. Multiple rapid shots on the target. Don't just shoot once and pop back out. The other reason it's a bad habit is now I'm doing the whack-a-mole thing where I'm jumping out in the same position. That's not a good thing to do either. Everybody agrees on that one, right? If I come out, I risk my life to take that piece of ground. I want to win that fight and then move on from there.